Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Growing Up with Godzilla. My name is Donny Winter, and this is my show where I have conversations with Godzilla fans about how they've grown with the character and franchise over time. We are right smack in the middle of season 4, and it's been exciting. We've been having some familiar faces returning. We've had some new faces making appearances, and for this particular episode, this individual is a bit newer in my life, but I'm glad that we've connected. And I'm really excited to kind of delve into their history as a Godzilla fan and pick their brain as a writer as well. So I would like to welcome on my dear friend and fellow writer, Patrick Kelley. How are you?
Hello, Donnie. It's nice to talk to you. I'm doing great.
It's nice to talk to you too, and I have to say the Mothra cardigan is winning me over, as you know it would.
Of course. Yeah, I saw it on the on Instagram store, and I knew I absolutely had to have it, so I picked it up. And then, of course, I saw that you gave the full ringing endorsement.
I
I'm
did.
very confident with my purchase, and I've been getting lots of compliments on it.
No, that's good. I would have worn it with you so we could have twinned, but I think I just wore it the last episode, so I don't want people to think I wear the same clothes for every episode. But no, no, so it's funny that the Mothra cardigan, when I first bought it, and so my fiance is, I wouldn't say a Godzilla fan, but is aware of Godzilla and will watch Godzilla with me periodically. So I put the Mothra cardigan on and I went out and I like modeled it. And he was like, "What on earth are you gonna wear with that? Because it like that brown." Like, and I'm just like, you know what? I don't care. I will find something.
It's Mothra. It goes with everything. She's queen. You could wear it with
Right.
anything. I
I
mean,
like a good earth tone, so that's perfect.
yeah, I mean, and if nothing else, I mean, most of my T-shirts are monster related. I'm not wearing a Godzilla T-shirt right now, but most of my T-shirts are monster related. So I feel like if the colors clash, they're at least in on theme.
Absolutely. And besides, I think when it comes to monsters, there should be a certain air of chaos anyway, right?
Exactly.
So that's what makes it fun. No, so I'm really excited to sit down and talk with you today. And we're newer when it comes to our acquaintance. Like we connected through BlueSky, didn't we? I think that's how we
Yes.
connected. Yeah. And is like as soon as we started interacting, I was like, I need to get to know this person. And then we started making plans for you appearing on Growing Up with Godzilla, and I got so excited for you to join me so we could just pick each other's brains and stuff like that. Um, I'm assuming at some point, maybe in the future, if we go to a convention, we'll meet in person. Do you go to any of the conventions or anything like that?
Yeah. Actually, I just got back. Well, this month has been very, very busy for me. The second weekend of the month, I went to All Monsters Attack in Chicago, which was very nice, and it was really nice to see. I've made a lot of connections with people online, and I get very little opportunity to see them outside of those online spaces in real life, and it is very nice to you feel grounded once you go to a convention or a meeting
Mhm.
fans. It makes it feel more tangible, makes it feel more real. And yeah, that weekend definitely felt like that with my friends, my little clique there, my little group. And then just this past weekend, I was in Novi for another convention, Motor City,
Hmm.
which was not Godzilla related, of course, but it was a good time still.
That's awesome. I regret I was gonna go to it this year, but I ended up not going to it. I keep forgetting that you live within the vicinity of not super duper far from where I live. So I'm assuming at some point we will cross paths and that will be wonderful. So it's great to have you here. And well, obviously we're here to delve into your history as a Godzilla fan, right? So how were you first introduced to Godzilla, Patrick?
Okay, well, I'll be showing my age a little bit, but most likely, see, I was so young that I don't actually remember what my first Godzilla movie was, what my first introduction to Godzilla was. I was that young. It was probably sometime in the early '90s, and according to family lore, I was like maybe 3 or 4, and I wandered out of my bedroom at night, and I sat down next to my dad, and watched what was probably the first Godzilla movie, since it was in black and white, or we had a black and white TV. I'm not sure which. And that might have been my first Godzilla movie, but that's not my personal recollection. I'm being told that secondhand, so I don't know if that's true.
Mm-hmm.
What I can say is that my first tangible recollection of Godzilla is Easter, either 1992 or 1993. The Easter Bunny gave me Godzilla versus the Sea Monster in VHS.
Oh, I remember having that VHS
This exact.
and that cover. It was wild.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yes.
I love this. This was the only one of that Good Times series VHS, like the illustrations. I think there was Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. They had one that looked similar to this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got this movie in my Easter basket. It was the first Godzilla movie that I owned, and it was a well-worn, well-loved tape. This one is actually one I bought after the fact. It's not the exact one I had, because that one probably doesn't work anymore, and I don't know where it's at.
So at this point, that one is more so a collectible as opposed to.
I do not own a VHS player,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, definitely a collectible. Though I don't think there's any mold on it, so I probably could watch it if I wanted to.
Hmm.
But yeah, so my earliest days of being a Godzilla fan really was. This was prior to the internet being a mainstay in people's homes and in people's lives. So that meant I didn't know how many movies they were. I didn't know the titles of those movies. All I knew was the video stores and the listings of my paper. And then I try to find those films, discover new films as I scoured local listings, as I scoured local video stores, and tried to find these movies. It was always something like, it was almost like panning for gold, kind of, trying to find new movies, and then those rare occasions where I'd come across something new. It was a core memory for me. It was something very exciting, something very fresh. So those were my early days, just kind of hunting for new movies, and then discovering that it wasn't just Godzilla, but also there were Gamera movies. There was Rodan and Mothra. And then, of course, seeing that those monsters appearing in, well, not Gamera, but the others appearing in Godzilla movies too. That was my early experiences. I could understand how people might hear that today, and it'd be frustrating that you don't have an immediate reference to. You can't immediately pull up a wiki and know exactly what's out there. But there's also something very rewarding of finding those early films and being able to watch them. And even if they weren't the best movies in the world, I'm referring, of course, to Godzilla Raids Again, you still get an appreciation for the film. No, this on your own.
Finally, someone who feels the same way I do about Godzilla Raids Again.
And my relationship for that film for the longest time, of course, being old enough to be with VHS tapes, was the Gigantus, the Fire Monster dub, which was, that movie was never, that had everything going against it.
I think the only good thing about it is that George Takei was in the dubbing.
Yeah.
And I adore that man so much.
Yeah, and the banana oil line is something of a meme now.
Yeah, that, like, forever banana oil.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So how about, like, okay, so this was like your childhood. And it's interesting that you mentioned, because I've encountered a few fans on the show who were introduced like super duper young to Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
So like at a certain point, as you got a little bit older, like in the single digits, you got a little bit more exposure. So as you ventured into your teenage years, how did your exposure to Godzilla either increase, decrease, change?
Well, it definitely ramped up over time. When, of course, in my early youth, I think that really what it is like any child, the more something's kind of put in front of you, the more you can engage with it, the more content, or the more kind of ancillary elements to it. This is why G.I. Joe and Transformers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were so popular for kids, is because you constantly had this influx of stuff. You know, you had the
Mm.
toys, you had a new iteration of the series, you had comic books and everything. And in my very early youth, despite the fact that I love Godzilla so much, I mean, he was like the ultimate dinosaur for somebody who was a dinosaur fanatic. I'm sure that's a very common story for Godzilla fans. You know, in those early days, there just really wasn't enough, you know. But then by the mid 90s, we started getting more things introduced. Trendmasters had a toy line. And then finally, I had something more accessible. I could go to my local KB Toys, like Toys R Us, and I could actually pull things off the shelf and you know, and cry for my mom to buy it for me, you know, and then I could take it home. I could enter my playtime. Um, and then as I got a little bit older, still I was introduced to G Fan magazine when I got old enough that I could start going to comic book stores, which at the time were always a little kind of like seedy. They were always like very dimly lit with posters all over their walls and everything. And as a young child, my parents wouldn't feel very comfortable with me going in there. But as I got a little bit older, I could. And then I found a fan publication. And G-Fan magazine became, you know, my sort of conduit in those, you know, in those early days, being able to find their new movies that of course I don't have access to because they're not released in the States yet. And there are other people like me, which that was one of the big revelations, is knowing that there's other fans, there's other people
Mm.
who are interested in the same thing I did, because I didn't encounter them in my day-to-day life, of course. And then of course, like by the time I hit 10, 12 years old, I got things like the Random House books. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
I've read those, yeah.
This was another very well-worn friend of mine. I must have read this book dozens and dozens of
Mark
times.
Saraceni, right? I think that's the
Yep, that's
yeah,
him.
yeah.
There was, I think, four books released in this series in particular. I had the three of the four. I just recently got the last one, Godzilla versus the Robot Monsters,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have access to that when I was a little kid. But yeah, like just there was like a slow sort of trickle of things over time. You know, Random House and Dark Horse Comics had their run of Godzilla comics and everything, which always, it kind of helped string me along, I suppose, as a fan. Like there was always a little carrot to dangle in front of me to kind of keep me engaged. You know?
Yeah. No, it's interesting because I remember my first exposure to Godzilla comics in the 90s were the comics that were released with the Trendmasters toys specifically.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember there was this one that had like Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan, and they were like attacking a city, or it was, and I was just like, as a child absorbing it. Although I will say I got really mad because my brother decided to color on some of the pages because he was like a toddler, and I was like, "What are you
Oh,
doing? What
oh
are you
no.
doing?" But oh well, what are you gonna do, right? No, so it sounds like at that age you really didn't have anyone with which to share Godzilla. Like it doesn't sound like you had many other people who like also found excitement in Godzilla as well. Is that accurate?
No, I mean, well, in my youth, um, I did have one friend. His name was Michael, and he was a Godzilla fan too. Unfortunately, he had a mother who was a bit overprotective of him, so he didn't get to come out and play with the other kids as much. I didn't see him as much, but he was definitely aware of Godzilla, and he was a Power Rangers fan, and he was into Beetleborgs and all that, the other kind of, you know, tokusatsu stuff as well.
You just unlocked like a deep core memory of Beetleborgs, especially.
Yep.
Okay, so I literally thought for the longest time that I was the only one who was aware of the show. And then I would ask people, and they'd be like, "What the hell are you talking about, Donny?" And then you just felt, I was like, "Yes, it exists. It for sure." I mean, I could have used Google, I suppose. But anyway. No, so, well, I'm glad that you at least had that one person who could enjoy it with you. So, like, okay, so teenage years, as you ventured into adulthood, like, how did your love of Godzilla shift or grow or change?
I was moving into other things, I will admit, because I think the Roland Emmerich film came out, and that sort of put pay to a lot of the IP stuff.
Hmm.
Godzilla became IP poison basically
Hmm.
for US retailers, and all those things just evaporated. About the only thing that we had in the early 2000s after Godzilla 2000 came out in theaters, which I did go and see a couple of times. I loved it. But after that, there really was not very much. I mean, you had some video games. You had the Pipes Work video game series, which I did play endlessly.
Me
Um,
too.
yes, well, they're great. I wish I still had my GameCube. Honestly, I'd still be playing it.
I spent a disgusting amount of money for a copy of Godzilla Save the Earth during the pandemic because I had one, but I wore it out. Um, and I now, because I have it on the Xbox, so I still kind of like if I'm having a bad day, I will just like go play it for a while, and then I'm ultimately better. Because who is a character in that? Finally, a playable character, our
Was it
queen.
Mothra? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I do have a copy of Save the Earth working somewhere around in my parents' attic that I've not been able to find. And if I did find it, I would go up and snatch up another Xbox immediately because I missed that game so much. And honestly, oh, what's the name of that game?
Gigabash, right? Gigabash.
Yes. And the Gigabash only gets you so far. you know.
I've not played it yet. I am a demon. Like, as a Godzilla fan, I feel like I should play it by now, but I haven't.
Well, Mothra is not a playable character. I don't think she's in it at all, to be honest.
Oh, well, then I guess I won't look at it.
We'll wait till she's part of the DLC, and then we can go ahead and grab it.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. So I had those games, and then Sony every once in a while would put out one of the Millennium films or something that hadn't previously been released. And I think that more or less out of a sense of obligation, I bought those things. But at this point in time, as I was moving into adulthood, I sort of you know just moved into history, which was one of my passions. It's what I went to school for. A lot of that, of course, I didn't really know how to connect my love of horror films, monster movies, Godzilla specifically, to that. So Godzilla was kind of like left on the back burner. But then in 2014, we had the Gareth Edwards film, and that kind of getting excited for that film, as it was ramping up towards release, kind of reminded me of how much I missed that, how much I missed, trolling around the Barry's Temple of Godzilla as a little kid and
Mm.
printing photos for like photo collages, and of course watching the movies just endlessly on rewind. And it was when that movie came out in 2014. Despite the fact that I'm actually, not the biggest enthusiast of that particular film, I will admit. But that just kind of like reeled me back into the fandom. I found myself in the fandom spaces again finally, and I found myself watching the movies on a regular basis, and then of course, the merchandising angle, really cropped up, and then suddenly I can just feel like I could become a collector again, you know.
Mm.
But at this point in time, a lot of things have changed because now we have eBay, now we have Amazon, now we have even direct import sites where now I can use my adult money to get all these things that I could only like salivate looking at pictures of in GFan or Collector's Guide.
Can you imagine when we were kids if we had that much access to Godzilla merchandise?
Oh, it would have been ruinous, I think, for my family too. Like we didn't, I didn't come from any great means. It came from a pretty lower middle class family. Um,
Same.
so I mean, but my parents did what they could to provide, and if they saw something Godzilla related, they knew that I was going to get it. They were going to somehow get it to me. But we didn't have Spiral Studios putting $2,000 statues out or anything at that time either.
I commend collectors who are able to get those types of things because I look at them longingly, but I'm like, I have a mortgage to pay.
Oh yeah, yep. I'm in that same boat here. I adore those. The sofubi, I think, is the thing that I really like that I don't feel like I could commit to.
Me too. I've been really wanting to get into those because they look phenomenal, but I'm like, that's gonna be well. It's between the finances and like the space, because like I have the space, but like I don't want to have to rearrange my space.
Right, right. Space is a big premium for me because most of my stuff kind of is sequestered to one office, one room for the most part.
Same, same. This is like my fiance is like, I love your aesthetic, Donnie, but the rest of the house gets to be the traditional home and garden HGTV house. Your office can be Godzilla Central. And I'm like, okay, that's like, you mean you don't want Mothra hanging on the wall anywhere? Like, what do you?
You know, so my partner and I have we have a more similar aesthetic because we love Halloween. We love sort of like the gothic stuff. We have our living room. We've got that sort of gallery wall, and it's a lot of skulls and bats and black cats and everything.
Oh, I love that.
I have one little drawing given to me by my friend Lisa. It's a little picture of Gezera. So I got Gezera on the gallery wall. Um, that's my little contribution from that. But generally, like we do find a lot more agreeable in our aesthetics. But my partner's more into cryptids, I think. Mothman,
Mm.
but Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monster, which I mean I definitely could agree with as well. And yeah,
No, I
so
love that. I love that. No, so I think like, I mean, that sounds like a very, I mean, it sounds like you slowly got back into Godzilla at a certain point, and then since the MonsterVerse started up, it's just taken off for you again, right?
oh, absolutely.
Um, no, I think that's wonderful. Here is one of the tricky questions that I ask everybody.
Yeah.
If you were to pick your three favorite Godzilla films right now, what would they be and why?
Number one is Godzilla versus Biollante. This is another one of those core memory stories of mine. I do not have a Laserdisc player, so you're probably wondering why I have a Laserdisc. The reason why I have this particular film here is because I walked into a video store. I think it was a Video Connection, and I I I, I walk in. I see over by the registers. There's like crates. There's like record crates, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what this is. Do they rent out vinyl records or something? Because again, this is long enough ago that people still had vinyl record players, even though cassette tape had really kind of transplanted.
Hmm.
And I started leafing through it, and I realized that they're not records. They're movies apparently, but they're like in sleeves and they're big discs like this. And of course, me being me, the first thing I'm going to do is look through the G section. And I was maybe fully expecting you know, Mothra versus Godzilla or Godzilla versus Gigan or one of the more common films that you would find. But no, I came across this, which I had never seen this before. This was really startling to me because, as a younging, I had only encountered Godzilla 1985 as like the latest Godzilla movie that there was, and then I came across this thing, and I'm like, oh wow! And the artwork, it was gorgeous, and it looked amazing. But the problem is they didn't have it on VHS; they had it on a Laserdisc. So then I had to go about scouring to somehow find a copy of this. I think I caught it on HBO one night back when HBO was free. I think that's the first time I ever saw the movie. But the moment I was able to find a VHS copy, I grabbed that. I still have it. But, I really like that story, so I got the Laserdisc at some other point. But yeah, Godzilla versus Biollante is probably my favorite Godzilla movie. I would say that it could be that, or it could be Invasion of Astro Monster, which as a kid I knew as Godzilla versus Monster Zero, because those are the two films that, if they were probably the first one that I was going to put on. I watched all the movies several times over, but those two movies tend to rise to the surface. They get more
Mm.
frequent watches than the others, and I love those movies so much.
They're so good.
They are. And Godzilla versus Biollante. I mean, I still think that as far as like the practical effects for the movie, that might have been the zenith of the series. Like it's like all things told, like the way that the miniatures were shot and the lighting involved and all the care taken. There's, I mean, you kind of expect with practical effects in movies, you're who's going to see like there's going to be like a wonky shot or two here or there.
Yeah.
Some, even if they're generally pretty well done. And Godzilla vs. Biollante, I think, is almost flawless from cover to cover in that regard. I know
And
that.
it's withstood the test of time so well too.
Yes. Oh, and believe me, I was tremendously excited when Criterion decided that they were going to bless Godzilla vs. Biollante with its own individual release, which I was shocked to hear. But I'm like, you know what?
I may have wept over that. I may have wept over it being on HBO Max.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
A lot of weeping.
and the valid too, absolutely valid. Um, I think the one thing I really like about that movie is it draws upon kind of the Frankensteinian themes, science run amok and man meddling with the very fabric of nature.
Mhm.
What that might lead to. Probably the closest we ever got to Godzilla versus Frankenstein.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. I think, especially if you look at it historically speaking, at that time, it was a very fresh take on that story too.
Absolutely. And Jurassic Park was coming. Well, of course, it predated Jurassic Park by a few years, but from the perspective of Americans, it basically came out almost practically at the same time. But that was very, very prescient, I think, for that time period. Because then you'd have Dolly the sheep and all this talk of stem cell research and everything, and
Mm.
now questioned about like how much how much of our humanity are we losing the more we try to sort of play with as God almost, you know. And
Yeah.
if I were to say one reason why I keep going back to this film is because it's not just the spectacle. The spectacle of this film is incredible. I love that, but it keeps asking me questions, and I keep trying to find answers, and you know how have my answers changed? Like how have my perspective shifted? The Godzilla films that I tend to come back to a lot are the ones that really that sort of challenge me to some degree and get me to reflect on that time period that the film came out, but also today, like how has that relevance changed?
No, I think that's very thought provoking because that's one of the reasons I revisit specific Godzilla movies too. Like I think the ones that really come to my mind the fastest would be Biollante, Tokyo SOS for me, and Godzilla versus Mothra 92 because they all deal with like social issues or scientific issues, human issues altogether that really still remain relevant to this day, right? Like our need to manipulate nature, our need to kind of, you know, step over boundaries we shouldn't be stepping over. And I think that, ultimately, we can learn a lot from Godzilla from that, and I think that's why Godzilla, like we've mentioned before on the show, has withstood the test of time, has remained versatile, because like it continues to examine this ongoing question of humanity playing God and what that looks like, right?
Exactly. um if I were to expand my list of favorite Godzilla films out a bit, number one and number two I've covered. Number three might be Godzilla minus one, which I know is a very popular answer these days. It's critically it's been very well appreciated, and as a fan it's validating too.
Yes.
An Oscar is incredible, but again, it is one of those films that maybe not much asking questions about science and progress, but more about, you know, the human experience and our resilience in the face of catastrophe, of great hardship. Not that that would be relevant to people these days at all, right?
No, right. What? Not the dystopian hellscape we're living in.
Well, not at all. And those themes, kind of tie back into the original film, which I might actually put at number 4, um, which might be kind of low for a lot of people, but that's just kind of how it shakes out for me. I love all these films. I mean,
Oh, for
there's
sure.
one of them I'm not gonna complain if somebody puts any one of these movies in. I will watch them, if I were to expand the list out to 5, though, Tokyo SOS, I would put on that. I'm not pandering to my audience. I'm saying that
And you're not pandering to me.
it's funny that my relationship with especially the Millennium films has changed quite a bit because like I said, in my teen years, I've fallen out as a fan to some degree after Godzilla 2000, which I love that film. That's always been like a very cozy watch for me. But then, Megaguirus came out and GMK came out, and I bought them on DVDs. Again, sort of obligatory. I watched them once and then sort of like put them on the shelf. And those things washed over me and then didn't really have much effect for me. But after I came back to the series after 2014, I started revisiting those films. I'm like, these movies are really good. Why didn't I notice that in my teens when I was too distracted with, like World War II or whatever it is I was reading about at the time.
Mhm.
And then Tokyo SOS, actually, it was it was a few years ago. My partner and I sat downstairs and I put on something on television to have just sort of in the background as we would sort of kind of scroll through our phones, and it was Tokyo SOS, and it'd been the first time I watched this film in several years, and I at first I was just sort of like kind of half watching, but then I got really sucked into it, and I'm like, how did I forget or not realize that this is essentially a sequel to Mothra from '61? And by the end of it, I was riveted. And it was so funny to me that like a movie that the first watch just had almost no effect on me whatsoever became a film that I really really loved. I mean, I love the Kiryu duology. I love both of
Mhm.
those films, and Tokyo SOS. It's just I mean, I was I was really big. I mean, I think the Showa era is still like my era of Godzilla more than anything else, and essentially it's kind of a continuation of that almost, and kind of like a very fan servicey, almost like fanfic version of like a continuation of Showa stuff, and I just adored that.
Same. That's exactly how I feel about the Kira duology as well. So, well, okay, so the next question then kind of breaks it down a little bit further. So, other than Godzilla, do you have any particular favorite kaiju? And then, of course, is there like a particular human character that you've gravitated to over the years?
Let me answer the second question first. Human characters, and it is always a bit frustrating for me whenever I hear some people, people say like, "Oh, it's about the monsters." Like you don't need human characters in these films. Like, I love, and
Agree.
as I mentioned, Monster Zero is one of my favorite movies. Um, the pairing of Fuji and Glenn, of those two, Akira Takarada and Nick Adams together, they just I could watch them all day. And I think it really is a testament too because this film is not it's a fairly standard kind of sort of 50s sci-fi alien invasion type of thing. They do some things that are interesting and different, but the characters for the most part I feel are very archetypal. They're not doing anything too crazy with them, but they're just played very well, and all the actors are doing an insanely good job, and just they seem like they're having the time of their lives playing these parts. And it's always, I think it's really a testament um, to Takarada and Adams that despite the fact that neither of them spoke the other's language really to any degree, as far as I know, they they the chemistry is just so palpable there. Like they well as a pairing. And again, it's so entertaining watching them. They have their like little banter back and forth. I haven't read much of the fanfic, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be some like cross, make it thing. I would, people let me know because I would read that.
I mean, I ship them, so
Yeah, I might have to. No, if I write that,
hey, we're writers here. I know somebody somewhere's gonna be like, "Ew, what are you guys doing?" Let us live.
this is fandom. This is just how fandom is. We gotta, we gotta get this out of our system.
Do you know what? I have a confession.
Sure.
So I once wrote a fanfic because I loved Miki Sagusa from the Heisei era, but I once wrote a fanfic where I I was a homewrecker and stole Koji Shinjo from Miki Sagusa. I shipped myself with him, and I was like, now I look, I never posted that story anywhere, but now that I look back at it, I'm like, yep, yep.
That's valid. There's nothing wrong with some self-insert, just kind of enjoy it. You're just working through some stuff.
You know what? But Mickey and I still remain friends.
Okay.
We were still friends in the fanfic, so that's what matters, right? Even
Yeah.
though I was a terrible person. But I digress. No, I think those characters are a perfect combination. Now, favorite kaiju.
Okay, favorite kaiju. Besides Godzilla, of course. Well, I will say I am a big fan of the sort of large in charge female coded kaiju. The ones that I mean, let's be frank. I mean, they're always tougher. They're always stronger than their male counterparts. So Mothra, Biollante, I consider Hedorah in there. I believe that Hedorah is female. And then the MonsterVerse Shimo. I love the kaiju.
I'm obsessed with Shimo. Shimo reminds me of this grumpy old grandmother, and I'm here for it.
She's very similar. So I have a Bernese mountain dog, Fuji. I didn't name her after the character Fuji. She's a mountain dog. So we've fostered Bernese mountain dogs. There's a Bernese mountain dog rescue, a Heart of Michigan Bernese dog rescue, and we've been fostering these dogs. We just named them after mountains because we're very basic. It's an easy thing to do. We weren't supposed to. We had fostered one dog and we loved her, and then she left us, and we were kind of broken up about it. So we were just going to do a transport for this dog from Belleville, Ohio, and we were going to transport up to Allen Park, which is very close by to me. And this dog, I loved her so much. She was an older dog. She's about 7 years old. It's pretty old for a burner. And the entire drive up, she just rested her head on my shoulder. And I knew that 2.5 hour car ride up, I was like, this is my dog. I'm gonna adopt this dog. And I mean, she's very, very sweet. She's very, very affectionate, but she's a grandma, right? She makes grandma noises, and she doesn't like, having to, to get up when she's kind of settled down, and she's always making noises. She's always being kind of curmudgeon-y and everything. And yeah, she's like a little Shimo that I have running around. She reminds me of it quite a bit.
That is so cute. I love that so much. Well, so here is the big question for you. This is always the big question of the hour. How would you say Godzilla has shaped you into the person you are today?
Yeah. It's one of those things where I've been watching these movies since I was a little kid. I've been watching all kinds of monster movies since I was a little kid. I always felt, at the time I didn't really know, but I'm a very introspective person, and I kind of, reviewing my life, and I start to sort of create, as a writer too. I create sort of narratives for myself, I suppose. And as I sort of make connections, I think the one thing is I I I really felt kind of out of place, out of sorts in my life quite a bit. Um, uh, my parents divorced when I was 8, and because we really relied on those two incomes to really make our household work, splitting them up means that you know we both parents had to move, so we had to move out of our house. We had to move away from my friend group. We had to move away from my school district, which completely sort of upended my existence. We moved into apartments. I split my time between my mom and my dad, um, and I was constantly moving around to different school districts. I never spent maybe more than 2 years in one place, and I learned very quickly, unfortunately, that like it was going to be very, very difficult to make friends and maintain those friendships. And after a while, I stopped trying.
Hmm.
I became very introverted, uh, and and the thing is, being sort of the new kid, and also being sort of introverted and quiet and awkward. It is I became a target very quickly.
Yeah.
Um, and I just felt so I felt very othered, you know. And and the thing is, like, now I think about it, it kind of makes perfect sense that monster movies were such a comfort for me, because I mean, essentially I was watching stories about others, right? And those others, of course, were too big, they were too scary looking, and they were going to be met with violence, with firebrands or pitchforks in one film, or maybe tanks and airplanes in the other. But I mean, at the end of the day, they sort of upset this sort of status quo, and my existence in these spaces kind of, I felt, in some small way, kind of mirrored that. um and it was hard, it was very hard. And but I think, if and it sounds kind of cheesy to say it out loud, but it really made sense to me at the time, and it makes sense to me still, that you know having sort of Godzilla as an example, the perseverance. Every iteration of Godzilla, doesn't matter what it is. It could be the first film, it could be the last. It could be, everything could change. His dorsal plates might look different. He might shoot different, colored heat beams or whatever.
Hmm.
Always still going to persevere. He's always still going to move forward. If he has the strength to keep going, he's going to. And I will admit fully well that, by my teens, when I was in high school, I struggled with that a lot. I mean, to the point of, you know, um, self harm. And but that model of just perseverance, you keep going, you're going to find that strength. I think that's the thing. I had those movies as a big comfort to me when I didn't really have much else in terms of like real connection with people or anything.
Hmm.
And but I had Godzilla, and Godzilla said to keep going. you know I'm going to keep going. So
Wow. No, I resonate with that so much. Like, I know, I mean, first, thank you for sharing that. Like, that was, I mean, I know how the vulnerability it takes to share something like that. But I mean, when I was in high school, especially struggling with my identity and discovering myself and etc., like the bullying and all that, like Godzilla encouraged me to keep going too. And I don't think people realize how Godzilla has done that for others, And I think that's why it's important to carve out opportunities to share these experiences, because they don't, those conversations don't happen enough.
Mhm.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing. It's sometimes that's really all it takes. I mean, we all struggle. I mean, I know that through COVID and just a myriad of other things going on right now, it always seems to, every once in a while when you're at your lowest spot, you think like, is it really worth it? Like, what are we doing here? And sometimes
Mhm.
all it takes is like, there's going to be another movie. There's Criterion's going to put out this film. I mean, if it's just one thing that you could sort of latch onto, and it could be anything, if there's a favorite barista you have at your local coffee shop, and you just want to like have a pleasant interaction with them one more. If that gets you through your weak point, then that works. It's absolutely valid. You
Yeah,
know, if it's a big silly monster movie, then that's absolutely valid. you know.
absolutely. Absolutely. I can't think of any more important message, especially during these difficult times, too. Yeah. So, well, let's talk a little bit about collecting. We are nearing the end of the episode. So I know you do like collecting, and you've shown off a couple of small little tidbits. Do you want to share any other of your favorites that you have?
Geez, I didn't grab everything that I would have loved to have, but I will say this: I don't collect sofubi so much because I'm not a big fan of that sort of artificial scarcity that seems to come up with so many of them. Uh,
Hmm.
collect a lot of the articulated figures. I have Monster Arts and a lot more Haya these days because Haya Toys is sort of the big new thing as far as articulated Godzilla toys and collectibles. Um, and that's really as far as like toy collecting, that's kind of like my big thing.
Hmm.
I'll get some kind of cute kawaii type stuff I can find here, maybe a blind box or something. But I mean, everybody does that to some degree, But I do. Well, I mean, one thing is I'm really big into physical media. I think it's very that we preserve. And here's the thing. As a full confession here, I will probably watch, if I'm going to watch a movie, it's probably 80% of the time it's going to be on streaming, because of the convenience of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, with the way things are, you watch, user end agreements change, and content gets changed around, or it's going to be shifting hands or something, or you might even, things that you thought you bought digitally might just be taken away from you. So I
Hmm.
do make a point to collect a lot of physical media. So I still have my classic media, Godzilla films. I've scrounged a few of the ones I didn't have, the Rodan War of the Gargantuas film, which I don't think are available on
I don't
or
think so.
4K at all in the States, unfortunately. So the physical media is really important for me. Obviously, I have these aren't the only. I have more Laserdisc than this, but I really need to get a Laserdisc player. I'm also a really big fan of the sort of vinyl record soundtracks that have been put out. I have pretty much everything as far as Mondo Records or Waxwork Records have done. So I know Waxwork had the all 15 films in the Showa compilation. They had a big box for that. I bought that. Um, Almost all of the Heisei and Millennium films have been put out by Mondo. I collect those. But beyond that, really, the things I really love are actually created by artists. Which of course, very recently I went to All Monsters Attack and I saw my artist friends and everything. And I love getting their artwork. I love putting their art on my wall. Um, I know, have you heard it? You've heard of Quasi's, I think. So
I've had Quasis on the show. I love Quasis.
you need to go back and watch that episode. They came up for their very first convention ever, so I got to meet them in person. Very lovely. Um,
Mm.
of these sort of dangling keychain things that I like. And I've got
They're so cute.
I love it. Gigan just kind of sticking his little tongue out like that. Just no thoughts. Um, I messaged her friend Naomi and I said, "Hey, is there a way I could get Megalon? I'm really regretting the fact that I got Gigan without Megalon. He's missing his boyfriend." But I think that Ozzy's going to be putting Megalon and the others up in a online store soon. So
Yeah,
I'm hoping.
Quasi sent me as a gift the Mothra keychain. I don't know if anybody can see it. It's like the egg, the cocoon, and moth, or no, it's the egg, the larva, and then the Mothra. It's so cute.
Oh my goodness, yeah, yeah. I want to collect all of them. They're so adorable. I also have other artwork that I picked up from the show. This is Henshin John Snyder made this Mecha Godzilla.
I love Henshin. Henshin John's going to be on Growing Up with Godzilla in a few episodes, actually.
Excellent, yeah, really nice guy, really sweet guy. I got his. Are you familiar with Mars Attacks?
Yes.
Yep. So Mars did this Godzilla vs. Biollante print. I love her work. I love all of her work. I gush over it. I love the colors. It's beautiful. The only thing I think I like more than this is there's a Hedera print that she has that has like a hologram kind of look to it.
Mm-hmm.
I got that from her a couple years ago at a show. She's very nice. Despite all the appearances, the pretense that she tries to put on, she's very sweet. I love her work too. And her partner in crime is Tanner Wright. And a little drawing of Gabara from Tanner.
That's so cute.
I have, my wall is filled with all of their artwork and some other various posters and prints that I have. What I've got to have to do is get a big portfolio and start kind of, rotating pieces around. And I'm not really as artistically inclined. I wish that I were. So the only thing that I could give them besides my money, of course, and I certainly did, is I also made bracelets. These are just some examples of bracelets I made for the show, and I was passing them around to them as well, which I thought was a nice, way to sort of make those connections. Mm-hmm. And then most of them were staying at the hotel at the Crown Plaza there, and Saturday I gave them all bracelets, and I thought, oh, this is a bit corny. Maybe they're gonna find this to be cheesy. But then the evening I ran into Tanner, who was sitting at the bar, and I just gotten dinner. Tanner was sitting at the bar, and I said, oh, wait, what are you doing right now? It's like, oh, we're all around the corner there. Can you come hang out? So I went and I grabbed a drink and I went to go spend some time with them, and they were all wearing their bracelets. I wanted to cry. It was so sweet.
That is so sweet. And see, but that's the thing. Like, I feel like the artists and the creators that I've connected with have been so unbelievably inclusive and loving and caring, and they really want to help create community, and that really means so much to me. So
they do. One of my absolute best friends in the whole world, I met him on Twitter back when Twitter was manageable. We're no longer on Twitter now for obvious reasons, but my friend Casey, and he's been getting into art, and I think it's amazing that whenever he gets stuck on something, he will get their advice, and they're also so willing to help him. I know that he did a piece of Gomora from the Ultraman series. He was having trouble with the sort of weird sort of belly scales that he has. It looks like a pine cone,
Mm-hmm.
And Mars actually made him a little tutorial about how to draw that. And so funny. And his piece came out really good. His talent's coming along very nicely, and it probably wouldn't be developing nearly as fast if it wasn't for this sort of support, this groundswell support from this community of artists that is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that support is so important. And, you know, it's interesting because that kind of transitions into the final question that I have for you. So, with this show, I mean, my goal is to help build community and share insight with other Godzilla fans. So, my last question, Patrick, is do you have any advice for Godzilla fans who may be new to the franchise?
Okay. For new fans coming in today have probably the exact opposite problem that I had when I was entering the hobby when I was a little kid, because I was struggling to find any little droplet of sustenance at all. And again, every discovery I made, every little bootleg action figure or every laser disc that I found was a victory for me. And they came few and far in between. But now we're just inundated with stuff. There's always more stuff. There's pre-orders of things. There's you can get practically every movie streaming somewhere probably. You have eBay, you have Amazon, you have all the import sites and everything. It seems there's so much. There's this kind of cavalcade, and then of course there's all the extra noise with social media. We always find ourselves in these fan spaces online, and a lot
Mm,
of it can be really corrosive, can be really toxic, especially if you start finding yourself in the wrong spaces.
yeah.
It is an embarrassment of riches, but it's also a bit of a minefield too. I think it get very overwhelming. And my advice for a fan kind of coming into this fresh is try not to get overwhelmed. You don't need to do everything. You don't need to be everything, and you certainly don't need to listen to other fans who are telling you that you need to be this, you need to do this, you need to see this and enjoy this. You're going to be a fan, which is ridiculous. There are Godzilla fans out there that don't really care for the movies. They just like to collect the toys. That is fine. There are fans out there who like the movies and they don't care about anything else. They won't
Mm,
work. They won't buy anything. They might just watch the movies on streaming. That's totally fine. Find the thing that compels you, that draws you in, and really hold on to that thing. And if you want to explore beyond those boundaries, feel free. It's there. You have it there. But you don't have to. You don't have to be any fan for anyone other than yourself. That's it. You only have expectations for yourself. Enjoy what you enjoy. Um, Stay positive, and don't let the background noise get to you. I mean, the thing is Godzilla could be a conduit that can just lead you to so many things. I know a lot of fans got into Power Rangers, Super Sentai, Ultraman, Gamera, and great things. I watch a lot of foreign cinema, not even science fiction or horror cinema. I'll watch French films and Korean films. I was watching, Bong Joon-ho films before Parasite came out. And the reason why is because I, as a young person, got accustomed to watching films with subtitles.
mhm,
And subtitles don't bother me like it does so many Americans, unfortunately.
mm, yeah.
And a lot of world cinema. I think there's a reason why Criterion really supports the Godzilla series. It's because they probably recognize that's a really easy entry point to a lot of great cinema that we would otherwise miss out on.
Yeah.
Because subtitles, you know, giant monsters can get you past subtitles, and there's so much stuff. If Godzilla gets you into Tokyo Story, Yasujiro Ozu, great,
Mm,
but also just make sure it's fun. Make sure um, it's benefiting you, and the moment it's not, then you don't need that particular facet. You don't need that person. You don't need that thing.
mm.
Just get out of it what you can, and don't let the rest of it bother you, because there's a lot else, but you don't have to.
Yeah. That's excellent advice because there really is a lot to wade through.
Mhm.
And I give people this advice when they go to G Fest for the first time too, because like it can be very overwhelming. Just take each moment at a time. That's all you can do. Grant yourself that grace, right? I do have one final thing for you.
Sure.
plug away. Where can people find your stuff and
Okay.
find you?
So I'm probably most active on BlueSky right now. That's I'm Kevin Kevin from Planet X at BlueSky. You can follow me there. Everywhere else, Instagram and TikTok, and most recently Substack, I am Monster01. That's Monster Zero, the number zero, NE.
Hmm.
And like I said, that's Instagram, that's TikTok. I very recently started a Substack, and I want to get into more of my academic writings as they relate to horror films and monster movies. I have a really interesting kind of theory about how our monster films and even in literature, Frankenstein, Dracula, Kong, Godzilla, of course, and many others, how those things are sort of representative of the kind of collective fears and traumas that really came up during the Industrial Revolution. I'll be
Hmm.
talking a lot about that on there. If that sounds interesting to anybody, then please, by all means, go ahead and look me up on Substack. But yeah. Otherwise, Kevin from Planet X, you can find me on BlueSky. I'm willing to chat anytime.
I'm already interested in that Substack. That sounds super fascinating to me. So, no, Patrick, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I knew it would be. And just know that you always have a seat open here on Growing Up with Godzilla.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Donny. It's been wonderful being here and talking to you.
And it's just fun just to get to know you more too. That's part of one of the nerdy reasons I love the show so much is I get to know everybody. So, my friends, do not forget that Growing Up with Godzilla premieres usually every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to click like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Go follow Patrick's socials. Those will be down on the description section of the video. And last but not least, do not forget to keep standing tall, Godzilla fans, and most importantly, keep going. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.